Hello and welcome to a brand new episode of Lowdown. Today, I'm absolutely delighted to be joined by Alex Clapham. Alex, a big warm welcome to the show.
Thank you very much for having me. As we discussed previously, yeah, massive fan of your work, and yeah, finally found a window to get myself on here. So yeah, looking forward to it.
I appreciate the kind words. I never thought in my wildest years, a few years back, to be a Cano Football and the Lowdown crossover, but here we are, anyways, Alex.
Yeah.
As you know, on this show, we bring it back to the very start. And with that being said, could you please take us through your earliest football memory?
Yeah, mine will be Euro 96. So maybe showing my age there to some of the younger listeners, but no, Euro 96, and it's going to be Gaza against Scotland. That's my first real memory. So I just turned 7. So that's when I really started to see the impact that and sort of effect that the game has on people. I remember people out in the streets where I were watching the game, and yeah, that's when I really thought, wow, what is this that everybody's losing their mind about? Obviously, I'd heard of it and seen people playing it, but I never really realized, yeah, how much of an impact and how big it can be. So it went from there, and then yeah, got taken to see my local team, Sheffield United, through the late 90s and then 2000s. We ended up going to quite a few games home and away. So yeah, it starts at Euro 96 for me.
And how early did the coaching bug come into play?
Coaching. Yeah,
Yeah.
so I've been coaching now I started at college, so 2008, and then my first real coaching job was in America, and I went over in 2009. Originally just as a summer camp, but I ended up meeting a guy out there, a Portuguese guy, and he had his own sort of football camps and football academy there. And we just clicked personality wise, football philosophy wise, coaching wise. And yeah, we just clicked and ended up working with him, living in his basement for a while I was there in the States. And then yeah, that sort of coincided with the same time that Guardiola's Barcelona team was taking over the world. So that again opened my eyes to something completely new from what I'd grown up around Northern England watching Sheffield United and a lot of Neil Warnock's teams. So yeah, it was something completely different, and that's when I started to see, okay, maybe this is a time where I hang up my boots from playing and I want to go into studying something new, which yeah ended up leading into having to learn a language to go and study a completely different way of playing, coaching, seeing, and feeling the game.
It's an amazing one because, and take this as a compliment, in research for our previous conversation and today's podcast too, Alex, it's been interesting to go through your career with a fine tooth comb and see it's been tough to kind of pick out a discernible trend. But the one thing I'd have to say is you've been pretty good at repeatedly and continually having your worldview of the game challenged. And I think, with all credit to yourself, that began at an early age, those summers abroad, taking the likes of US and Mexico before coming to Spain. I mean, what shouted out to you at that time, leaving the north of England to spend those summers in the US and Mexico? Was it something you always knew that you wanted to do, or was it just a case of reckoning?
Uh, yeah, again, a lot of credit. Got to go back to, yeah. Listen, I realized I'm not going to be able to play to make a serious living. I realized I wasn't good enough. So that's when I started to think, okay, maybe. Well, I love the game. I know I want to be involved in football in some capacity. So I ended up going out to the States, and it was there when again I have to credit my Portuguese sort of colleague there. He introduced me to a completely new way of seeing the game, and I remember he had the kids lined up at the bottom of a grass bank in before the session, and I thought, okay, here we go. This looks like something that I'd have done as a kid, where we're running up and down the grass to get fit, running up and down the banking. But it wasn't that. It then took everybody got their shoes and socks took off, and they were looking for the different sweet spots and techniques on how to caress the ball, how to volley the ball. And that's when it really sort of opened my eyes to, okay, wow, there's so much more detail to what I've seen or heard in my childhood growing up. And it came from there. And then, as I said before, it coincided with Guardiola's team. And then yeah, that led itself into the Spain national team conquering on the European stage and the world stage. And that's just when it really sort of made me think, wow, there's a complete different world out there. And I want to go and find out as much as I can about it. And so yeah, so for me, it became a case of, luckily enough, the Portuguese guy again. I'll put his name out. He's an older boy now, so I don't know if he does podcasting or what have you, but he's João Amaral is his name, and he's up in the northeast, and he has his own. He's still going with his private sort of soccer camps there. But yeah, he was also a language teacher. That was his full-time job. So he was fluent in obviously Portuguese, English, but then he could speak Dutch, Spanish, German, different languages. So again, through him, I lent on him a lot for the different language skills, and yeah, he taught me a lot football wise, and then how to open my mind up to try and learn a new language, and how they can also, the Latin languages can relate to one another. So yeah, that's when I went through there, and luckily enough, a job came up after a few years in the States. A job came up in Mexico, and I saw it as an opportunity to go out there and learn as much as possible in the language whilst coaching as well. So in the mornings, I was in university doing Spanish classes, and then in the evenings, I'd go and coach. So I was doing 3 hours a day Spanish classes. Then I was able to go and put it into practice in the evening. So yeah, from there, a role came up just as an English teacher in a school in Barcelona. So I went over in 2014. And yeah, once you're there, and in Spain, and especially Catalonia, they have such a taste and such a flavor for the game that everybody knows everybody, and everybody knows somebody who's in the game, coaching, analyzing, playing, refereeing, whatever it may be. So yeah, after a week of being there, I was involved with the school team, and then into a local team, and it sort of grew and developed from there onto my courses.
It's amazing though to kind of when you're reflecting back, speaking about, the hunger and the passion that you had installed in you, the foresight at the time to decide, you know what, this is the path that I'm going to be embarking on. And to have that day one mentality repeatedly, which you honed throughout your career, I think it was not as much prominent as it was back in the time at Spain, whereas very much the beginner's mindset. And I know listening to you in previous podcasts before and speaking amongst ourselves, it was quite a time of reckoning for yourself because there's an awful lot of lessons ascertained as to how you even got on UEFA B, the very origins of Cano Football, at the time in Barcelona, teaching to make ends meet, which all kind of, to me, Alex, and everyone listening, show in clear, high definition that there's a stark reality of the path you want to go on if you want to kind of succeed in this game of football.
That's it. There's a lot of sacrifices, and especially as we spoke before, if you've not had a professional career and you've not got a name, you're more or less a nobody in the game. Yeah, you've got to pave your way, and that means a lot of sacrifices. A lot of times, yeah, I was living in Spain, and I was, yeah, completely broke, scrambling together whatever I could to get to sessions, which were, yeah, I was volunteering at sessions, and then teaching English throughout the day for a pittance, really. Um, so yeah, it was a lot of sacrifice. Obviously missed family, missed friends, missed home. Even even going, I know I spoke about it before. Even going to see Sheffield United, I missed it so much when I was away. But yeah, no, you do what you have to do, and it's just I'm not. I don't think I'm so rare or uncommon in doing that. There's so many people out there that do have to sacrifice and go through, a lot of uncomfortable situations where, yeah, they have to choose to suffer rather than going, there's probably better roles and an easier way of living for sure, where they can have a comfortable job. And that was one for me, because I remember after, what have I done, 9, 10, 11, 12, in 2014 in the States. So I'd had a few years in the States, and I was in a position, in a situation where I'd made enough relationships and contacts, and not reputation, but earned enough respect there where I could go and have a full-time role and live, I know you've spent time in the States as well. It's you can live quite a nice, comfortable life there, and that was an opportunity for me then. And I've got friends who I went out with originally and spent time with there, and they've ended up living there, married there, working full time, living an incredible life. But something was just calling me from Catalonia at the time, and that's when, yeah, when you're in a full-time role and you've got your own teams in America, and you've still got that calling, yeah, but what about if you don't take a chance? What about if you don't do this, don't do that? And yeah, I went over there, and even when friends from the States did come over and visit, and did come over and spend time with me, they were saying, I can't believe you live like this. Like, you've not eaten a proper meal in a week. You've not, you've not really slept in a bed. Like I said before, I was, yeah, there was times when I was renting just a bed on the end of a friend's living room, and I'd just be sleeping on his floor or sleeping on his settee, paying him whatever I could just to get by, just to be in the country and learn. But yeah, that fell hand in hand with Luis Enrique's time at Barcelona. So I was lucky enough to be able to make contacts within the club as well and go in and watch academy sessions. So I was learning a lot there. So yeah, so whenever I had any free time, I'd be watching sessions, as you know, certainly around Barcelona and the Catalonia area, especially. There's a session going on every street corner. There's something going on, and yeah, listen, the level and standard and detail that coaches are sort of going into there. You can learn so much from watching a grassroots under eights, under nines, under tens team. You can hear and see so much detail and learn so much on session organization and preparation, and even methodological aspects from coaches there. So yeah, that's where I wanted to be, and did whatever I could to make it happen.
And as someone who's definitely influenced by, I would say, a whole range of external influences growing up, foreign influences. No, Spanish mythology was always in your line of thinking, even back in England and being in the US. Consequently, do you believe that if coaches are going to follow a similar path, that nature versus nurture debate, it's not just enough to kind of read about it and study it. It's another question altogether, Alex, isn't it? Kind of going there, living there, embodying it, experiencing it on a day-to-day basis.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. I remember getting out there and everything was completely different to anything I'd witnessed before. So I went in and as I said, I went in and sort of viewed sessions and observed sessions, and there was a guy who'd been coaching at Barcelona Academy in La Masia for a good few years, and then he left the club and he was out as a head coach of an under 14s, yeah, under 14s team on the outskirts of Barcelona. And I was watching his session. I remember thinking, well, he stood and talked to him for 11 minutes before anybody's kicked a ball. Um, that failure straight away on any of the courses that I'd been on in England. And this is, again, I'm talking about a coach who's been in and come out of, Football Club Barcelona. So that's when I realized, okay, the people, when I say people, I mean coaches, kids, parents, they're all completely different socially. And yeah, that's something where I knew I had to sort of take a back seat, and yeah, just realized that I'm here to watch and learn for quite a while, and I did a lot of that. Again, I'd done my mornings in Mexico, but my language, the Spanish language skills were not nowhere near strong enough to lead and manage and direct a session. So I was assisting a lot of the time and picking up as much as I can like that. But I realized very quickly that yeah, I just need to take a back seat here and just listen and learn. And yeah, it's again, when I come back to England and I see youth sessions, it makes me flip back the other way, and I think, wow, this if they did this in Spain, the Spanish would be thinking, but why are they doing that? Why are they doing that? Why are they doing that? They're just letting it go. They're just and that's cultures as well, and that's something that again you have to be open to. And luckily enough, it was something that I got to experience and open my mind and my eyes to.
It's amazing too to kind of have that awareness at the time, Alex, because indeed you shape your own experiences and your experiences shape you. And it's something that we speak about often as seeing football as a means of expression. And it's typically indicative of the Latin cultures which you've subsequently worked in, not only Mexico, Spain, but also Italy and Brazil.
Yeah, massively, massively. Yeah, it's the as far as cultures go, as I said, the coach I was speaking about in question there. I remember, like I said, the first 11 minutes he was chatting to the group about the game at the weekend, and then he sent them all to do, I think, 3 or 4 laps of the pitch, and then they're all stood in lines, passing balls backwards and forwards in groups of two. And I thought that I'd get slaughtered on my FA level 1 or FA level 2 doing any of these things. They'd kill me. Everything's backwards here. But yeah, that's something that, like you mentioned there, it's once you've been and done it once and been outside your comfort zone and realized actually there is a different way to do this, then yeah, I think it sort of comes easier in the next roles, whether it be, Mexico to Spain to Brazil or Italy, wherever it may be, you start to realize, yeah, this is completely different. And that can be away from football, even sat in a restaurant. You can sit next to or on the table across from completely different culture, and you realize within, seconds that, wow, just the way they communicate or don't communicate, or how they sit, or how they use their mannerisms, that's when you start to realize, yeah, they're completely different to us. But yeah, like I said, once you've done it once, you're sort of open to take it on.
And living in so many different places, Alex, did you ever find it tough to adapt to the culture?
Uh, I think a big part of finding it tough is usually, yeah, the language barrier. And that's why I didn't want to go into Spain blind as with regards to the language. So yeah, for the first country I lived in where I didn't speak the language was Mexico, but luckily I was living with and working with other British cultures. It was like it was like a football school where the kids came to also learn English. Even though I used it to improve my Spanish, and I'd try and improve quiz the kids on stuff in English, and then I whatever we did in English, we'd do it in Spanish after, so I could learn as well. But yeah, I think a big barrier there is then the language. But to learn a language, you have to learn the culture, but to learn the culture, you have to learn the language. They all fall hand in hand. Um, and yeah, that can be with regards to terminology or different words within coaching or football. And yeah, if you translate it literally, a lot of the times it won't make sense. It just won't make sense at all. Um, so again, like I said, you have to sort of understand all the saying that, because the mentality and mindset is completely different to what it is in English speaking countries. Certainly around football. I remember we spoke a couple of weeks ago, and we spoke about an article that we both read, and it was about the linguistics in football, and how in Latin languages, so be it Portuguese, Italian, Spanish, or whatever, a lot of the football terminology is feminine. So then they're already thinking in a certain way. Whereas again, I know when I grew up here, and I'm guessing where you grew up, a lot of it was, yeah, win your duels, don't shirk a tackle, make sure you get stuck in, do not lose a race. It was a lot of that was around the physical aspects of the game. Whereas, yeah, certainly in Spain, and definitely Brazil, a lot of it is technical and tactical aspects rather than the physicality side.
I think it segues nice to on the field stuff because it's something we spoke about before, the positionism versus relationism debate. And if you were to really water it down to its very essence, you have one school, the positionist school, that's very much top down, and the relationism school that is very much bottom up. When in reality, it's kind of there's a messy middle in between. And I know that's the messy middle that you kind of place yourself at the edge of that continuum, have been steeped in, the Spanish coaching badges and all the methodological steps, as opposed to a relation at school that I know we go back and forth on a good bit, and echoing from your time of Vasco de Gama in Brazil. So where would you say you sit on that continuum, Alex?
I sit wherever I'm working. So, like you said, then when I'm in Brazil, I have to understand that, yeah, it's going to look something a lot closer to what we call relationism. So, yeah, I think football's about feeling and it's about emotion. And yeah, we we want to try and control what we can, but in the end, the players play the game. We're only there to really facilitate. And while it's a sport that's played, you can attack, you can defend in any direction within a 360-degree radius. There's no real time limit that you have to attack in. If you think about basketball, and then obviously tennis, you can only really stay in your half of the court or the pitch. None of these things really apply to football, so we have to be understanding that, yeah, it's the players playing the game, and we can try and guide them and say, okay, but what about this, and this? But in the end, the players have to feel it and see it and smell it before it's happened. And like you said there, when I'm in Brazil, yeah, I remember the first session, and I'd arrived the day before, gone to the hotel, didn't really sleep much, got up, went to the morning session, and the first thing they did, we all did a introduction, and then they went out into an unopposed passing pattern, and the ball was switched out to the right back, and before before he even thought, it came inside. So it was not like an interception, but before, he didn't let the ball arrive to him. He ran inside and flicked a pass with the outside of his foot over a mannequin into the winger straight down the line. And that sort of really opened my eyes to, okay, yeah, this is completely different. That's not something that you really see in Europe. It was like a flicked back heel pass that's cut out a mannequin, and yeah, everybody was obviously quite excited about it. And I remember thinking they'd absolutely kill him. Anywhere else I've been in the world, they'd absolutely kill him and slaughter him for, why are you doing that? Why are you cutting inside? Let the ball do let the ball do the work. The ball's faster than any player. But no, that's when I realized there he's going to come inside, he's going to try and join in. And then, yeah, again, that was another experience where I had to sort of just watch and listen a lot and then help out wherever I could. But luckily, set pieces where I were working there, they're quite concrete, they're quite black and white, especially when you're defending. Something that I learned, and it took me, to be fair, 3 weeks in Brazil to realize, yeah, I need to completely change my approach with how I'm working with these players. And I know we spoke like a couple of weeks ago about it, and yeah, there were players there who they didn't even speak Portuguese. So even when some of the players were speaking Portuguese to them, they couldn't really communicate because they came from a favela where there's only sort of a dialect or a language, or to me it sounded only like sounds from the Portuguese that I'd studied. But they were making sounds with their mouth, and this is how they communicated. So yeah, for me to go and sort of speak to those players and say, okay, when this player holds up two hands in a cross like this, you need to be able to go and block this zonal player, or you need to step behind the goalkeeper. And I realized after 3 games, yeah, I need to completely change my approach here and let the players run it with how they feel. And that's where the success came. And I think in the last, what did I have, seven games there? I think in the last 4 games, we scored something like 5 set pieces, something like that. And a lot of it was working out which players can take on sort of order and direction and organization positionally, and then which ones just have a smell and a feeling that I can't coach. So typically the ones that would have the smell and the feeling would be the ones that would go out and get on the ball in wide areas, whether it's a free kick or a throw in or a corner. And then from there, we'd start to talk about zones and areas where the finishers would arrive. But yeah, it's really interesting challenge and complete education for myself going out there. So yeah, a long answer to that question, but it depends where you're coaching.
It's a very interesting one. And the way you were speaking about them there, I thought for a second you were from Sheffield, the way they were speaking. But anyways, taking you back to the very start about that, you said football is about feeling. And it's something I've been thinking about an awful lot recently, the limits of perception. Not only perception in of itself, but how we define the word. And, when I say perception to you, it could mean one thing, but conventionally, it's what we see. But, it's not only what we see, of course, it's about what we taste, what we smell, what we feel. And that necessitates two things. One, being very open to the ground in which you occupy, and two, embracing the uniqueness of the ground itself. And I think it's that hearty combination between both, Alex, that makes football special, no matter where you go across the world.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. And again, that's with everything you do. That's not only football, especially when you're working in different cultures and you're around people and humans from different cultures. That's something that you have to take on. Again, a lot of people say your first impression is the most important, but you don't know. You don't know what people's first impressions are, especially when you're going into different cultures and different sort of mindsets and mentalities, certainly around football. But again, I remember going in and I used Brazil again, and I went in, and in the first 3 weeks, they were in what they were calling a crisis, because in the Serie B in Brazil, it was the top four go up automatic. There's no playoffs. It's top four up automatic, and they were fourth, but I think they were level on points with fifth. For that club, Vasco de Gama, to not go up was, yeah, it was going to, they were calling it a crisis. So I went in there was a lot of pressure brought on me. They'd flown me over, they put me in a hotel, and they said, yeah, we need to get better at set pieces, both attacking and defending. And I went in and I was sort of not like a bulldozer or all guns blazing, but I knew that I need to be quite command coaching and sort of, okay, you need to be able to do this, this, and this. If you can't do this, then we need to find another player to do it. And it just didn't fit with their style of life or their style of feeling, or as you said, their perception of the game. And again, that's something that I had to learn, and luckily it only took me 3 weeks, but at the same time, 3 weeks in football can be somebody's job on the line. But luckily we managed to work it out. But again, yeah, it's that's something that, yeah, you have to take it into consideration. Again, perception going from Brazil across to Italy, the perceptions of people, the perceptions of football, especially English football, and what an English person in football may bring or may bring. Yeah, it's completely different, and it's something that you have to work on. And again, in the end, you're only working with people, you're only working with humans. So there's no, I know I spoke the other week, and we were speaking about what's it like coaching in Italian, what's it like coaching in Brazil. Every individual is completely different. Again, I'm going back to Vasco again. There were players there who played in Europe. Some had been in Ukraine, Russia. Some had been played in La Liga in Spain. Some had played Premier League, and people that have played in Europe and in those sort of systems and structures are completely different and have a complete perspective, and a completely different perception of football and how it should look. And yeah, it's something that we need to take into consideration for sure.
It's fascinating too because there's a feeling there football can't be boxed. And football is full of simple people that lead complex lives when it comes to the sport. Thereby it was absolutely fascinating. You tweeted out the clip of Michel speaking about his Girona side a few 8 days ago, and it was space
Mm.
plus time plus emotion as the caption. And I think that is, in of its essence, the beauty of football when it's force applied, when you have an idea that you can magnify down and full way of through that the coach is getting his ideas through to players just by clear and full dedication to the application of the process. But that necessitates, Alex, the transition of a coach nowadays. He's not only just that set piece coach, as you spoke about, going in there, giving the instruction, but it's all about the how in the delivery. It's nearly like you're a psychologist or emotionalizing with all the players, all the coaching staff.
Absolutely. And when you speak there, I thought about the courses, and I remember when I went to Spain, and I turned up on the first day of the UEFA and I had my whistle, my boots, my tactics board, and I was like, okay, what's first? And they said, no, 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 no. Listen, you don't need any of those things for a good few weeks. Before you go anywhere near the grass, let's start thinking about people and how people learn, and how different ways of teaching to different ways of learning can have different effects. So I remember for the first 2 weeks of the course, and this is an intensive course, so we're in there in the morning all the way through the afternoon, and the first 2 weeks were pedagogy, and yeah, it was just completely blew my mind, especially because it was in a different language as well. But yeah, the different ways of learning and the pyramid of learning, and then it went from there sort of into sociology. That's I remember at the time I was thinking, but what are we doing? But what about tactics? What about, what if we have two pivots? And what about if we want to play out and from in to out and get back out to the left winger? No, no, they said you need to learn how to work with people and how to teach people, because in the end, we are just teachers. We are facilitating talent, whether it be academy football, whether it be first team, Champions League team. It's we're facilitating the talent of other people, and yeah, that's something that I needed to understand, and I think it's key as well because again, you see, I won't name names, but so many top players come straight out of playing into a good job, and you realize it's something they're two completely different beasts, two completely different monsters. It's playing is so different. I was only speaking last night to a coach, and he was saying that he'd had a player who played all his career in the Premier, and he wanted to do some youth coaching. And he's saying, okay, yeah, no problem. You can do this, do that with us, and we'll do these hours. And he said, I was talking to him about the area size of his session, and he didn't understand why the difference of sort of 3 yards or three sort of steps between two cones could make a massive difference to the session. And why, if you move that, then you have to learn that, okay, the timings have to be different, or this player might not want to play in that area there because it doesn't work well in a relationship or socially with this player. Yeah, it's something that goes far beyond just the X's and the O's, as they say.
And it seems to me as though, like, and I know it's bringing it back to pretty much the start of our conversation too, Alex, but doing UEFA B necessitated a big change in your worldview at the time. Have you had many reckonings since?
Sorry, Connor, the video glitched a
Yeah,
bit
yeah.
then. Can you say?
Yeah, no problem. Doing the UEFA B in Spain, it caused a major shift in your perception of the world at the time and subsequently worldview. Has that happened to you many times in football since?
Yeah, massively, massively. So many times as well. Even going from working up in Catalonia to going down and working with Getafe down in Madrid, the two cultures are so different, completely different. And we're talking about two major cities in the same country. The cultures there are completely different. And then I jump from there to Brazil or Italy. There's two cultures there that are so completely different. And the way that people learn there are so different. And again, yeah, I can speak about players in Brazil who they grew up not not having any education, not having to be anywhere at any time. So there's kids there who don't need to tell the time, and their parents have never known how to tell the time, never needed to know how to tell the time. So again, I'm working with players there who my job depends on them getting results. Their job depends on them getting good results. And I'm trying to work with these players in a way where there's pressure and try to know that they need to learn how to learn, which is something in itself there, the pedagogy side of that. So no, listen, it's been something that the more I travel, the more my mind opens to that as well.
It's just fascinating when you speak of the traveling piece, the time in Brazil to harp on and another time, because people don't understand the weight of that club Vasco de Gama and the pressure that was on that season to achieve results. And it was interesting listening to you on Gary's podcast recently. I mean, you brought it up that the training ground became like a scene from the city of God with tens or hundreds of kids, if not from the favelas,
Yeah.
standing on roofs, sitting on roofs, watching you train and whatnot. I'd imagine it's
Yeah.
quite a hasty environment for a set piece coach to be going into, Alex, for the pressures on the next game.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, like I said, they used to sit on the walls all the way around the training ground. So yeah, they were shouting at every misplaced pass and every mistake. They were on top of it. But yeah, listen, the atmosphere inside that stadium at Vasco is like something that I've never ever experienced before, and I don't think I ever will again. I remember my first game, we drew 1-1. The striker missed a 1v1 late on to make it 2-1. And we had to be escorted out of the stadium by the army after the game because of our own fans. And I won't translate what they were singing to him, but it wasn't very nice what they were singing to him. So yeah, the pressures there were something that I'll never see it ever again. And yeah, that comes down to the way that they see and feel football. It's not a game. It's a means to an end. It's a life. It's a lifestyle there. And I remember we had to win our last game to get promotion. And as the bus we were pulling out of the training ground to go towards the airport. There were thousands of fans at the end of the driveway with flares, rockets, flags. So we're going towards these fans, and you can imagine I'm trying to get close to the window to have a look and say, "Wow, look at all this!" And all the players and all the staff start closing the curtains on the bus, and I'm saying, "No, no, what are you doing? Look at the fans! Look at the fans!" And they're saying, "No, no, they're not here to wish us good luck. I promise you." And yeah, the rockets, the flares, and the flags and the banners are all talking about don't come home if you don't get promotion down in Sao Paulo. So yeah, we managed to go down there and we won the game. We got promotion. I remember the party was on till sort of well, it didn't stop until we went to the airport, and we flew back to Rio. and I was saying, now there's going to be a party at the training ground. Now there's going to be a party. I can't wait. Drove back to the ground, back to the training ground, got off the bus, absolutely nobody there. Silence, silence. I remember saying to the staff, do you want to go for a meal? What do you want to do? What do you want to do? And they just sort of said, no, we've finished fourth with Vasco in Serie B. You can't finish fourth. It's nothing to celebrate. And I remember saying, yeah, but I know I've only been here 7 weeks, but you guys have been here all year trying to achieve this. You've been away from your kids, away from your wives and your friends, giving your life to get promotion. Now we've got promotion and got the job done. For me, at least go and have a meal or something. And they were like, no, we just need to go home and make sure it doesn't happen again. We can't come back to Serie B, which, yeah, that just tells you about the pressures of that club.
Amazing.
So,
It's fantastic insight too, Alex, just into kind of the pressures really of working in the inside of a club, speaking of that collective relief at the end of the season. But although going in just on a temporary, albeit a temporary period, but one littered with pressure at that time of the season for the final 7 to 8 weeks. I mean, did that external pressure from the fans, from the board, from the Brazil Football Society, you know, did that weigh into your workload on the pitch whatsoever, or would you have found it easy enough at the time to disassociate yourself from the external pressure?
it's a good question. Subconsciously, possibly subconsciously. But I mean, yeah, I went directly from working in the Premier League, so you can imagine the pressure there where, yeah, it's the sort of, certainly when, you've conceded from a set piece and everybody knows you're the set piece coach, you're wide open to it from all angles, especially. But yeah, going across to Brazil, I think in a way it worked in or certainly my favor, because we had, after the first 3 games, we found success, and I remember the fourth game was every set piece looked like it was going to go in. Everything came off that night, and from there, the fans were, every time we got a free kick or a corner, the fans were making noises as though we'd already scored, and the players felt that. And I remember that the day after on the training ground for the recovery session, the players were wanting to talk about it, and the players were, what have you got planned for next week? What are we going to do next week? And when you get that sort of buy-in and sort of belief in what we're doing, yeah, they do the work for you. The players started to see that it's a way that we can win these games, because the games were tight, and we're getting through a lot of the games just on emotion and just on belief in we're a massive club, we've got to get up, we're a massive club, we've got to get up. A lot of it, when Jorginho came in, a lot of what he did was emotional connections and building strong relationships with players. He only came in 3 games before I did, so for him to come in and sort of implement and complete new identity or football philosophy it would have been too much in that short amount of time. So he came in and he was just trying to make players happy, give a good feeling, and a good sort of trajectory to what we were doing. So yeah, any set piece we got was massive for us. And yeah, in the last 4 games, it felt incredible. I remember in the second to last game, we'd been working on a set piece through the week, and after 3 minutes we got the corner and it worked, and it came off perfectly after 3 minutes. I remember just the gaffer just turning around and he was like, "You done it? We're doing it. We're doing it." And he's a religious guy, so he was shouting all sorts of religious stuff to me as well. But no, it's just a good feeling. And then the players see that and then they buy into it. And again, with that crowd as well, we used it to we definitely used it to our advantage, because then every time we got a corner or free kick, you could sort of smell something was going to happen. And I think the opposition felt that as well, because we'd been creating and having so much success from set pieces. The opposition was starting to think, okay, here we go, here we go. So no, yeah, I think you got to try and flip pressure and try and flip it and use it to your advantage.
And evidently, with the role of a set piece coach, the impact at times can be unquantifiable. Well, it can be massively quantifiable, but it can be an extreme impact. But your time is limited. So, what would you say, especially in a high pressure octane role, no matter where it be, Alex? What would be some of your key principles for being effective at utilizing your time?
Yeah, certainly if you've got short time, I know some of the roles I've had 5 minutes a week. And when that's been the case, I've just gone in and said, okay, we need to be defensively solid. Because as I said before, defensively, the principles and structure and system can be quite concrete. Of course, you can make slight alterations in, yeah, maybe in one game you have one less zone, and maybe he goes and helps the goalkeeper and buys some space for the goalkeeper. Maybe you don't go as tight when you're marking. Maybe you sort of have they call it the bus stop, where they're all in a line and they're more blockers rather than man oriented. So yeah, for me, I always say do the concrete stuff first and build that. And it may be a 3, 4, even 5 or 6 week structure where you're building that, and then move on to it might be that long just on corners, and then you might move on to free kicks. And then the other side of it is, and we've not mentioned it, and it doesn't get mentioned a lot, substitutes. Now, when you can make so many substitutes at once, it can throw a complete wrecking ball to any attacking plans. Especially, so imagine you're going on as a substitute. I always say a player's probably got 5 to 8 seconds, even I'm talking elite world-class internationals, they've got 5 to 8 seconds of attention. That includes the gaffer telling them where they're playing, what they're going to be doing. So if you can just grab them and tell them what they're going to be doing when they're defending corners, what they're going to be doing when they're defending free kicks, and then you control when we have attacking set pieces. So, for example, the last thing you want is they run on the pitch and they're defending a corner immediately, and they're looking over to the bench, and then that panics them. That panic can create stress amongst the group. That's the last thing that you want. So I think make sure you nail the concretes first, and then yeah, as I said, the attacking stuff can come later on. A lot of the times it's not been as you'd wish, and a lot of the times I've been coaching attacking set pieces in the dressing room before the game because the team's just been announced. So yeah, as I said, the players already going through their own sort of routine and schedule before the game. They've got their headphones on, and I'll be saying, can I just grab you just for a second? I just want you to do this. But yeah, for them to feel the trajectory, the timing, the angle, yeah, it's almost impossible if you're not out there on the grass spending time. But you do what you can, whether it's showing a video, but at least tell them where you want them to start, and more importantly, where you want them to finish.
What I'm fascinated to learn more about, Alex, is, the planning and preparation, because as you spoke to, in some roles, you've only had 5, 10 minutes on a weekly basis. And obviously, when your time is that limited, it could bear, you know, possible disagreements with fellow coaching staff members. And I was just wondering, in that instance, if there was ever a disagreement, how big a role would data at that stage play to your advantage then in deciding the context of that week's set piece?
Listen, everything depends on the gaffer. Everything depends on the gaffer. In the role I'm in currently, it's more of an advisory role. So I go in and I'll say, the data says this, this, and this. So maybe have you thought about having a different kind of profile in this area, or maybe adding a zone, or changing the positioning of the zone, or whatever? You can show them data, then you can show them how it's being done with success at other clubs. But at the end, you can only give the information. If the gaffer or set piece coach or whoever it may be doesn't want to go with it, then you have to go with what they want to do. Otherwise, when I've been in clubs, yeah, I've been in discussions with managers, and they've said, I remember one, I'm not saying what club or coach, but I remember we got on to about second and third and fourth phase and defending, and they were saying, all right, but when can we then switch to complete man-to-man? And it ended up in quite a debate where, well, I don't want to, because I don't think we have the personnel. When you go man to man, you lose control completely. They decide where you go, so you don't have any control over what area is defending. But you have to fight your case. And again, data is a tool. And I've said it before, it's a conversation starter, but certainly we can use it to back our arguments. And when the data says, if we do this well in this area with these players, then yeah, we've got to use it as much as we can.
And it's fascinating to kind of put, to put an end to the Vasco da Gama story, because, it just didn't end there, going back to the hotel after that promotion push, when it was achieved, let alone you were on a flight the next day back to England before starting a new role at promotion pushing Genoa at the time. such just fascinating to me how you're able to kind of leave one context and then seemingly go into the other. But obviously, as you spoke about there so eruditely, necessitates at the end of the day what the gaffer wants and, getting to know your players. So I'm just fascinated to know, after the high of experiencing promotion with Vasco da Gama in Brazil, how did you settle and compose yourself before readying yourself, albeit in the space of 48 hours, to make that quantum leap to Genoa and Italy?
Yeah, I remember speaking to my my sporting director at the group and saying, "Can I have a week? Can I have 2 weeks?" Because I'd not seen my family, I'd not seen my missus, and I was saying, I can't tell you the stress of. Yeah, listen, my hotel was on front of the beach and it was 30 degrees every day, but I didn't see any of that. The most I did was I went for a run in the morning down the beach, but apart from that, I didn't. I could have been anywhere doing that job. It didn't matter that I was in Rio de Janeiro. I was working all day every day, and then in Brazil you travel and there's a game, and there seems to be 2 games a week, 3 games a week sometimes, and then they do the what they call the concentration. So you stay in a hotel for 3 or 4 nights before a game. Um, so yeah, there was all that, and then yeah, so I went from that. Came back and they said no, Genoa are under pressure. They've not won in the last three. The gaffer needs help. So yeah, so I got down, put down my put down my summer clothes, picked up all my winter coats, got on another flight, went to Italy in November, and yeah, they were under real pressure. The gaffer there, they needed wins, unfortunately, and I take responsibility, but we couldn't help him enough, and he ended up losing his job. And yeah, it's a completely different environment to walk into. Even results alone, promotion aside, uh, going from Brazil to Italy, yeah, there couldn't be two more contrasting cultures or environments. But yeah, I remember going in there and they changed the manager after 10 days and Gilardino came in and yeah, he was about order and a lot of the coaching is automisms and it's a similar coaching philosophy and coaching style to Antonio Conte, I always think, because he speaks about if the ball arrives to this zone, this pass needs to be played and the strikers need to make these movements and the midfielders need to drop or advance or whatever it may be, depending on the zone. Which again, that was something the complete opposite to Brazil and how they played, where there's more freedom and more relationism aspects and concepts. So yeah, completely different to walk into. But again, listen, Gilla came in and found a way to win. We were winning games 1-0, 2-1, just picking points up, picking points up. And he gained momentum. And I have to give a shout out because the set piece statistics were good there because we had the kid who was just gone to Tottenham, Radu Dragusin. And listen, I remember the first month we were struggling. We were getting the deliveries right, but the runs were wrong, or the block wasn't coming off, or the timing was wrong. And then the next couple of games, everything else was right, but the delivery had never arrived to the right zone. And I remember alongside my colleague, a German colleague there, we ended up working a lot with Radu and he was doing individual stuff after training, just working. And we used the slinger, I think it's called a ball slinger, what the goalkeepers use, where it's getting fired out of a machine. And it was my colleague's idea. And we had it lined up just so the cross was consistent and coming in. And we were just working on his running and his timing and his technique and his technique and his technique. And the other players were lined up behind the goal. And obviously you can imagine they're joking and making fun. And this was on a Friday. That night we went and travelled down, I can't remember where we played, Modena, I think it was. 2 minutes into the game, first corner, it comes in, boom, bullet header into the top corner. The day after, we had a recovery session. Listen, it's not because of the machine and it's not because of the coaching or anything. It just so happened. But the next day, he came in alongside 3 other players saying, "What's next week? What are we doing next week? Can we work on this? I've seen this other corner that Arsenal did last," and it just started to grow. And then the next game we scored 2, and then the week after, yep. And it's similar to Vasco. It's got to be a buy-in and a belief, but they don't get that without success. You just need one goal, one goal. And yeah, it comes and with that, players not to speak out of turn, but players like to score goals because there's financial gain at times, and then obviously if you're a central defender who brings goals from set pieces, then your price tag goes up and your career can be a lot more illustrious, So it's something that we ended up working on quite a lot, and we got the success, and it ended up playing a massive part in promotion again.
And it's amazing with all these global influences, education and job wise. It's quite ironic now, that you have such a global facing position with clubs all over the world in various different continents in your portfolio. And it's something what we spoke about now a few weeks ago in terms of football for us. Well, football for myself has been, such a joy to watch, I would say, in the last few years more than most, in terms of you see how many unique expressions and kind of game style that are coming across. And particularly this season too, in terms of football has been ever so much a question of attacking through time as opposed to space, and for me it's those kind of you look at game inside principles, position, moment, direction, speed, the moment and speed, the decision as to when to attack now, Alex, it's more prominent in the game than ever.
Yeah, for sure. We covered it the other week. I remember we speaking about Arteta and Pep and how Pep's probably the most defensive coach in the world. Is that because he wants more control when he's attacking? Possibly because they all roll into one. I know I've spoke about it previously, but as far as breaking the game down into phases, I don't think it's it's not the way I see or feel the game anyway. It's certainly more about one continuous moment, and the way you attack results in how you defend, and the way you defend results in how you attack. If imagine we're attacking and we go, the left back plays a long diagonal pass across to the right midfielder, and then there's 80 meters between them, and then the right midfielder ends up losing possession, and then you end up with big distances, and that's when you can't really put it down to, okay, but we want to attack like this, but when we defend we want to look like this. It can't work. And again, I've worked at clubs where they use the specialized coaching, and it's who coaches what when, because I remember there'd be an in possession coach working on, okay, in here we're trying to work at 3v2 overload here, and then once the ball goes from out to in, we get the underlap who goes through, and he's going to get the ball in there. Okay, good. But then the defensive coach would be working on, we'd be in a low block, or more of a mid to low block, and I was thinking, so how is this going to go together and work together when the distances are completely different in the different moments? And we ended up just getting possession, and because we were in a low block when we were defending, how does that look when we regain possession? We wanted to try and get the ball forward a lot quicker than we ended up, rather than what we had anticipated in the beginning, and it just ends up who coaches what when. So it's not really something I subscribe to. Certainly your set pieces are, aside from that, it's certainly an area where you can have I think set pieces are a game within the game. But aside from that, it's putting specialized moments and specialized coaches in different areas, because and this leans again into relationism and positionalism, and you want to overload and attack one area on one side, but when you overload one space, that means you're underloaded in another space. So you need to sort of choose wisely. So again, I spoke about it last week with regards to the Fluminense against City game, and when Marcelo switches play and they lose it, and it's Nathan Ake, a central defender, curling one onto the post from 30 yards when City follow up and score. And they say that the remedy or how to counter that would be a player positioned or occupying a diagonal space behind the ball. But then again, that's certainly closer to positionalism. So with regards to the phases and the spaces and relationism and positionalism, I try not to go too far into this goes into this box with this label on this shelf. It's certainly it's one moment, and the more we can control, for me, again, that's because of my education, but I find the beauty of football in control, and that's why I love to watch Guardiola teams, De Zerbi teams, Arteta teams, Emery teams, Michel teams as well, and Xabi Alonso now. A lot of it is about we have control of the ball, of spaces. And yeah, it's that's the way I see and feel football.
It's amazing you speak of having control, and for me, I would echo something similar. However, there's an interesting trend, I would say, this season too, just watching so extensively, that it's the arrival points in football, not only the arrival points in football, but who's arriving, that is providing the kind of shock to opponents, and seeing the game as one phase, one living organism. It's been interesting to see the success of Jude Bellingham, in a La Liga this season, who haven't had to kind of deal with a six or an eight arriving into those, key arrival zones, I would say, not having to deal with them before. Michel's Girona, where you have the left back Miguel Gutierrez, who's bombing on past the last defensive line so often. Or in fact, Vincenzo Italiano's Fiorentina this season, where you're seeing Gonzalo Quarta, the centre back, ending up on the last line at times. So for me, it's fascinating to see that kind of change and adapt. For me, Alex, what I'm fascinated to therefore kind of investigate is to change the player profiles, which this impact may have in the game going forward.
Yeah, massively, and you touched on it there. One player changing one player can can take a wrecking ball to the system, or it can make the system and structure look completely different. Even if it's changing, for example, you build up in a 3-2, but then you change the two rounds, so there's a right footer on one side and a left footer on the other side, or both left footers. It's completely different. I remember, I think it was 2018 World Cup, was it? Yeah, and Maguire played on the left of the back three for England, and because he was wanting to pass from out to in, the attacking trajectory and angles were so completely different. But then something else that you spoke on there, and I think this is something that it fascinates me, and I said it before, it's cliche to speak about City and Guardiola all the time, but something that he speaks about a lot, and you said it actually the other day when we spoke, is they are changing and finding a different way to win, not only season to season, month to month, but game to game. And imagine they've got 2 games a week. They look different in every game, but if you change the profile of player, for example, if Foden comes off for Silva, it's completely different. Foden wants to play forward quicker. He wants to be more vertical. De Bruyne coming on into the other half space, that changes everything, because he's somebody who wants to drive, he wants to attack spaces, whereas Bernardo, or last year we could say Gundogan, was more, they can be more conservative and take care of the ball rather than attack too quickly. But again, that leans towards the phases and how you look again. So they know if, and it's something that I think, if Grealish plays or Doku plays, the City look completely different. Defensively, I know when Grealish plays, they tend to try and invert the left full back a lot more, because they know Grealish is not going to defend as well. Again, with Doku, he's somebody, and I know I saw a clip the other day where Pep was killing him for not defending, and I think he started walking for a couple of seconds, and Guardiola was screaming at him from the touchline. So one player, the way they defend, the way they attack, the way they want to move inside, or they want to, for example, Doku's a lot more vertical to Grealish. So if Grealish wants to get it and comes inside, then it's probably better to play a left-footed fullback who can overlap around the outside, and vice versa for Doku. If he's more vertical and wants to go down the line and cross it, then it's probably better to have an inverted fullback behind him. So yeah, the profile of one player can change how a system looks. But again, this is why I think in the future it's going to be difficult to talk 4-4-2, 4-3-3, 4-2-3-1 when the spaces are beside players and it's not really between lines anymore. It's more, can we start to think horizontally as well as vertically? So I think, was it Rennie Marik who spoke about it the other week? I think he said he's thinking about formations maybe in the future, rather than thinking vertically when we say 4-3-3. Maybe we're going to start thinking about, can we go horizontally across the pitch? So we're going to have 2 on the left, 4 centrally, and then 2, for example. So for me, yeah, one player profile change can alter everything. And I actually, to progress on that more, is when I was in Italy and Gilardino came in, again with the automism training and the automism philosophy and methodology, there were players there who were in positions where it probably suited them, to do other things. It probably suited them to receive it on the left foot on a half turn and then drive forward. Some other players would be better receiving it on the right foot and probably facing their own goal to attract a defender from behind and then bounce it and attack the space behind just because they're better sprinters without the ball. It's something that's massive, and we discussed it a lot there in Genoa, but in the end, we got the job done. We used it to our advantage, and the players used it in Serie B, knowing that with this system, with this philosophy, we're a step ahead of the opposition. We know where the ball is going to be. From the moment we take a goal kick, we know if the goalkeeper picks a pass to his right, we know where the next pass is going and the next three passes are going to be. And that's a massive advantage to have if you've got players who are clever enough to know it. But it did end up like a dance routine at times, which was really interesting to be around and really interesting to study. But yeah, some players, like I said, coming from, I can't imagine that happening in Brazil with Brazilian players, them having to learn a dance routine when there's a ball on the pitch rather than dancing when they've got the ball. It's completely different. It's completely different dancing when a dance routine, making the ball do the dance rather than when you've got the ball, you're the dancer, let's say. So yeah, it's interesting. It's interesting.
Consequently, it's going to be really intriguing to see as to what provocations this has on training methodologies going forward. And will they become more global as a result? Who knows? But I mean, Alex, as someone who studies the game extensively, evidently, it supercharged your path to where you are today. What are you studying at the moment outside from your day-to-day role, be it football or otherwise, that really excites you about the future development of the game?
Yeah, I think it's important that you try and stay up to date with everything that's going on. And of course, there's all tactical trends. There's all like you've mentioned, so many teams there, Bologna, Fiorentina. There's so many different trends going on. So yeah, I think if you can open your mind and open your eyes to the different styles, because in the end, I'm not sure what percentage of players the Premier League is. I'm not sure what percentage of coaches the Premier League are English, and the percentage of players that are English. So I know it's not high, which makes me, then there's football that exists outside England. So I think a lot of people need to understand that yeah, things aren't born here and things don't end here. It's a lot of the times things are brought in here from around the world. So for me, I'll try and watch as much as I can, be it Italy. Obviously, I'm still involved with Genoa there, so I'm watching their games, so I get to see a lot of top football there. And I obviously watch a lot of Spanish football and German as well, because Hertha Berlin are in the group as well. So there's some really interesting stuff going on, even in Bundesliga 2 in Germany. There's some interesting styles and some unique ideologies of football there. But for me, in general, the data side and the analytical side is they've got to try and find a way to fall hand in hand. We need to find a place where we accept the data, because I speak to a lot of coaches and a lot of ex-players who are becoming coaches, and as soon as data comes up, they start to freeze up a little bit and think, what are these numbers? What do you mean? Can't we just talk about football? Isn't this not football? But listen, this morning I was on the phone to an agent talking, and he's asked me about a player, and he was talking about data to me. That's an agent. So that's the way the game's going. That's the way the world's going. If whether we like it or not, that's the way it's going. The kids are going to be savvy on with data. I think we've got to find a way to, certainly if we're working in academies and youth football, find a way to learn with the kids. So whether that be, I don't know, it could be give a kid homework to analyze himself on his iPad, so he's not just sat at home on his iPad playing whatever game he plays on. I don't know anymore what the kids are playing, but whatever he's doing on his iPad, can we say, actually, just watch this 10-minute clip and I want you to draw out and analyze and let me know what you think. I don't know if we've got the software or data or whatever we can for that. But we've got to find a way to grow with it and move with it, because it's happening. But whether we like it or not, there's going to be more technology, there's going to be more data. And as coaches, it's not normal for us from our generation. I'll go back to the start with when I started watching and then playing and then kicking a ball against the wall after Euro 96. The last thing I was thinking about were computers and data, but that's the way the game's going, and we've got to grow with it and use it to our advantage.
Absolutely fascinating. Alex, I've really enjoyed this chat. It's been very therapeutic, in fact, to speak football with you from all four corners of the globe for the past hour or so. As is close in tradition at the end of the show, Alex, what would be your one key bit of advice for those aspiring coaches listening to you speak today who wish to thread a similar path?
Yeah, similar to what I've just said there as well. I'll touch on it's you've got to move with the times, you've got to move with it, because if not, you'll be left behind us. So the next generation of coaches are really brave. You know, you're looking at the youngs, but and even in England now, you look at the young coaches, they're so brave with what they want to do. And yeah, they say it's risky the way they want to play, but for me, the biggest risk is not taking a risk at all. And I think that comes with growing, and that comes with your own self-development. Another one is follow your own path. Don't worry about what's going on behind you. Don't worry about what's going on beside you. That could be metaphorically or literally. Don't if you're coaching on the pitch next to somebody else, don't worry what they're doing there. That's another coach, another group of players. You do what's right for you and your players. Whether it's your career and your own ambitions and aspirations, just look forwards and chase upwards. I think it's something that Alex Ferguson, I think it was on his documentary, was saying a tip to what he always used to do, or a key to what he always used to do, was chase upwards. So even when they were 5, 10, 15 points clear of Liverpool in the league with a month left and it was all but wrapped up, he used to say, yeah, but Liverpool have won this many titles. We've not won as many titles as Liverpool, so we need this one. We need this one. And then the next year he'd find, okay, but then the Champions League, we've not won as many as Liverpool. We've not won as many as Real Madrid or whatever. Always find a way to keep chasing upwards and don't worry about what's going on beside you. And then last one, coach as much as you can. There's a lesson in every session from every player, be it an under six who's just starting out, will teach you something about yourself and how you need to approach different scenarios, or be it a Premier League player who you're working with in an individual session, or as a group, or as a group session, or a video session, whatever it may be. Coach as much as you can, because that's where you're going to develop.
Absolutely fantastic. Alex Clapham, thank you so much for joining me today on the show.
Thank you so much for having me, Con. It's been a pleasure.